Welcome our viewers, Mulimutia. Thank you very much for choosing the Checkmate as your number one source of the news in the Pearl of Africa. We welcome you back from week 46 of 2025. We are gearing close to the Christmas season, and if you've been passing through Kampala, you've been hearing some File Bongole Lutaya and Bonnie M.
Bonnie M, yes.
Yeah, Maria Carey is not common here around, not maybe in the US or other countries, not this part of the world. But the mood is coming in, and also the election season is very evident. If you've missed in Kampala, we also tell you that a few developments here and there, but also the stories of the traffic, of a little bit of floods, of polluted air, unfortunately, of stoppages because the president is passing. Those will never miss. But we are here to tell you everything that happened in week 46 of 2025. And as usual, I have my usual friend, Nicholas. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you. Pleasure is all mine, as usual, as we get into yet another episode of The Checkmate.
Before we go into what is going on in Uganda, I always first ask how your week went. So
my week was well. My week was good.
Any highlights?
I was up country. And of course, election fever everywhere. People are mobilizing. Been a rainy season. Farmers are planting. A lot is going on in the country. So,
how is the market?
For which products exactly?
I know you're a farmer, a proud one. So
the markets are well, especially for cash crops. For those who are into, coffee and all. Maize producers, the markets are not doing well. There's been a lot of production in Kenya, which used to be our primary market. So the prices are really, really low now. But the people are surviving.
I think the biggest challenge, even before we go through the topics, it's funny how I have a client who have the capacity to take all the maize that is produced in Uganda. But that lack of linkage between who needs the maize and who's producing it, and the capacity, for example, the financial capacity of the middlemen that should be delivering that. I think that's where the whole issue is.
And lack of regulation, because some of the maize is dried badly,
stored badly. The moisture content is not.
Aflatoxins are present. So the market does not extend beyond, the people that are after quality.
And now almost a quarter of what they use is imported from Tanzania.
Yes,
why would
Zambia,
we be importing maize from Kenya, Tanzania, and Zambia?
No, and when Kenya has shortages, they import from Zambia and Tanzania, because Uganda, aflatoxins, we don't dry it well, we don't store it well. So and there are gaps in regulation.
In the regulation.
They used to do it with coffee, where they make sure people pick the red cherry, they dry on tarpaulins instead of
the ground. They cull when it is well dried, good moisture content. That's why the quality of the coffee over the past many years has improved. And I hope that Maif that took over UCDA can do the same. Did the closure of the Coffee Development Authority affect
massively
the quality? Just let's talk about the export numbers, and then also how the people view the product that is getting out of Uganda.
The export numbers have not reduced because I think that by the time the UCDA left, which is just last year, it had given out so many seedlings. People had, started to farm coffee on really large scales. I was in Bunyoro recently, this week where I was coming from, and people have opened up big acres of land on coffee, 26 acres, 20 acres, 10, 15, and these are normal local people. And this is something that didn't used to happen many years ago, when people just put them back on the backyard, a few trees here and there, they're in a bush. But these guys are now doing it commercially. And so the numbers have come in, but the gap now between when UCDA left and now, I don't know if the Maif enforcers have arrived. 2
C's and 2 T's, that's how the economy has been sustained: coffee, cotton, tourism, and tobacco. The last T has lost a little bit of rank, but we hope that as a country we can find the ground to keep at least the 2 C's and the remaining T functioning around. We dig deep into the stories that made the headlines in a week, and the summary of it is that we'll be talking about the campaign trail, of course, what befell the NUP presidential candidates in terms of the disruptions and the arrests that were made. We'll tell you more about that. We'll also tell you about the pardons and the outgoing DPP and the incoming, who they've pardoned and entered a nolle prosequi. We'll talk about that. We'll also talk about the remarks of the president on 2 fronts. One, the access to the sea and the question of the limitations of Uganda as a landlocked country, and also the acknowledgement by the Raisi, still talking about the abduction or the arrest, whatever you want to call it, of the two Kenyan activists, one of them being the namesake of my colleague here, Nicholas Oyu, and their subsequent release and the press reviews, the press conferences that they have done in the aftermath of their release. We'll talk about an unfortunate story of TMR Hospital, which is still holding on to the body of a deceased young student that unfortunately fell down from a building in one of the private schools. And finally, we'll talk about the comments by the director of National Council for Higher Education about the quality of our universities and lack of research. That and more, and the other stories. We'll dig deep a little bit on South Sudan, what is happening, and how the vice president was removed and demoted to a private in less than 24 months. We'll tell you that as part of the story and other things, and also the story that we touched a little bit for Brian White and the rise of criminal and unchecked criminality that goes on unpunished. Welcome to the Checkmate 256. First story of the day, Nicholas.
Yes.
And in that order, as we discussed, we're talking about the campaign trail and the NUP disruptions. And that is on two fronts. And the one being that you are aware in the previous week that the president for the National Unity Platform was in Western Uganda. And specifically, I think he started in Chisoro area and then came up Rukunjiri, then in Tungamo. But before then, he was in Mbarara. And there were masses, huge. I think one of the biggest rallies that he has done and Mido. But even that rally that made news, police had made an attempt to stop him, to divert him from going. And then on that way from Mbarara, on their way to Waswa, police blocks, opens, and when they are, it was like a siege. They block the second, and then
it was an ambush.
Yeah, and then they are in the middle, and I think the initial number was 89 that had been arrested. Some of them were transferred, of course, in Kampala, but the official list that was ironed before the Chief Magistrate's Court in Mbarara was of 36 NUP supporters who have, I think, since been charged with obstruction of justice. And those 36, actually 38 supporters were arrested on November 7th, if you remember. And that was along the Uganda. We can go through. Some of them were, of course, transferred to Kampala. Olivia Lutaya, who has spent the better part of her last 5 years in prison and refused to take a deal, or took the deal and then refused to follow through with it, has been arrested again. And now, with the illegal drilling added on the charge sheet of the Eddie Mutwez. So the campaign squad for the NUP has been reduced by over 40. Of course, the initial charge from police, and which is what I want you to weigh in, was saying that these people had been stealing phones and causing commotion on the campaign trail, even in the rest of the parts. What are we reading from that story? Is it the usual, or that there's another art now, the angle that we need to discuss?
I think it's pretty much the usual, except we need to understand its genesis and why there was that trigger. Why this did not happen when
he was in
when he started his campaign in Busoga. Why it didn't happen when he went to the east towards the border. Why it happened where it happened, and in the manner in which it happened. First of all, I think that the biggest, you see, the good thing about the Checkmate is that we when we record, we have these conversations on record. And when we talked about what they can change, you know, at the beginning of the campaign trail, I remember talking about how they need to have a national appeal. True. Why? Because the roots of the party had been here in Uganda and some parts of Busoga, you know? So,
and the other thing where you were a prophet was when we were discussing the quiet election in Uganda.
Yes.
And you had said that when it reaches the western and the central, things would change. And we've already started to see that.
It had to be a matter of time, because when the campaign starts in Busoga, I mean, Busoga is almost part of Uganda. You see, the people had made it feel that the NUP party is just here in Buganda, in the central region.
In the central region.
You know?
Which can cut across to Jinja.
Yes. So Busoga was not, even by their voting patterns of last time, you can say, okay, Babu commands crowds in Buganda and Busoga. But when it went to the east, I remember we came here and said, the rallies I've seen in the east, in Mbarara.
Unprecedented.
When they know that he's sleeping in this kind of hotel,
they will be outside the hotel.
Where they welcome him. Someone was not going to be, because you see, this is a revolution. This is not twesange kuchisawe anymore. And there must be something that causes someone to abandon their work. Instead of waiting for 2 p.m., 3, 4 p.m. to go to the designated ground of a certain municipal pitch where the campaign is going to be, to say, no, let me wake up early in the morning at 8, 9, go to the hotel. Let's make a statement. Let us show him that he's welcome. It's not even to show anyone else. This is just to show the man that you're welcome. You represent our views. You represent our pains. You represent our ambitions. That was not going to go on for a long time, because someone now, the picture now starts to change, and it starts to project the Honorable Kyagulanyi as a national, these are generic crowds. These are not people that have been
It's not cosmetic.
It's not cosmetic. He probably has he has maybe a team of 100 people
that he has to work with, to make things happen.
Protocol.
Even in the US, media, they do that.
Yeah. I mean, every campaign trail, even local leaders, every campaign trail, you have campaign agents. The ones that go with you. The gari. I hope not in the derogatory manner of people fighting and what, but the people that you move with. Definitely he has an inner circle,
But it doesn't take away the masses that have been turning up.
Masses flocking his hotels, coming early, taking him around. When they say you're not going to use the main road, they go with him into the panyas, into everything. So
the dirty roads and.
But let's go to this issue. When he does the Mbarara rally, and the city is painted red. This is what people think. This is a stronghold now of the NRM, of the yellow camp. But you see, Harold, fortunately both of us come from that part of the country. This is not, and yesterday the campaign was in Shema, which we both share as a district. This is not 2001. This is not 2006.
It's 2025.
We must acknowledge the demographic difference has brought, and even the change in economic circumstances, so many things, has brought a new generation of people that are, have different ambitions, have different dreams, have different struggles altogether. And they... For
context of the viewers, our national census for the last time, just to give context, Museveni has been in power for 40 years. Mm-hmm. So someone who was born when Museveni took on power is 40 years right now. But if you keep going down, the population keeps getting more. So most of the voters, the registered voters, are below 35. They do not know the story that Museveni represents before coming into power. So you have most of the voters as young people.
You have even gone, if you see people who are like 28 and below, are the most people. You go to Mbarara, go on the streets, see the vendors, the guys in the tax parks, see, that generation of Mbarara is Museveni's stronghold. The West is Museveni's stronghold. Has eroded. It has now remained with our parents. But the people that are slightly younger, 30, 35, going down below, their dreams are different. Remember,
and they see that system as a limitation to their dreams.
Because the system is clogged and it's a limitation. And what anchors the convictions of the old folk is security, because they saw the war, they probably saw Amin, and are thinking maybe this is better, but now the young minds don't have that. And rightfully,
they are the kings that knew not Joseph.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you. They are the kings that knew not Joseph. They didn't know what his contribution is. So, and rightfully, honestly speaking, I don't think that a nation can be built on what transpired 40 years ago. And that's why
the discussion should be more progressive.
I understand what Rwanda does with Kwibuka, but generations will come after where the genocide is a past event. So the nation then therefore must be hinged on something fresh and new, not on, guys, if we go this path, what will happen is what happened 50 years ago. Yeah. You get that kind of thing. So when he does the Mbarara rally, when he does the it started in the Antonde, then Mbarara, that was so massive. There was absolutely no way these people were going to let that kind of thing go on, So that is where the disruptions, I think that is where it was hatched that, the first thing we should do is to isolate him. let's take away.
Reduce the guard, as you call it.
Yes, because, I mean, when you have... there are not many people, and I will not deny that. You cannot do a presidential campaign without those people. Definitely. First of all, they give you the first layer of security.
That's true.
The first layer of security, the first layer of...
They're your mobilizers.
Yes. So should not be a shameful... These are not buses being ferried in to fill the grounds. They're just your mobilization team of maybe 100, 150 people.
Team Karejira on X usually shares the Google data on how many people are searching about presidential candidates. In all regions, people are searching more about Bobi Wine than in Museveni. Even in Mbarara, as high as 74 against Museveni's 20-something. But the discussion that we are having is, for example, if you see Bobi Wine's campaign trail, you will see very many media-attached people.
Yes.
Social media live, TV.
Yes, so many YouTube.
Pictures, 1,000 YouTube, because the reach is the young people that have an access to a smartphone or something like that is opposed to someone who has to wait for the news on maybe the mainstream media and stuff like that.
Personally, I don't really I take Kariegira's thing with a pinch of salt, because interest might
dictates,
also be correspondent on... I mean, everyone knows Museveni, has lived with Museveni, most of us, for a while. So we already know enough about him. So this may not be in a manner of
support,
of support,
but interest
and being inquisitive. Who is Bobi Wine? What has he done?
Everyone wants to know.
How does he compare? So I don't know if this translates to support.
It never does. Interest is not necessarily support.
It's not necessarily support. Yeah. However, you can clearly see that the rallies that Bobi Wine had in the undisrupted ones are different from the ones of last time. So you can clearly say that the national appeal we were talking about,
it's taking shape a little bit.
It's starting to take shape. And if Bobi Wine had been allowed to do the national consultation, see how Museveni went around doing PDM. If he had been allowed to do national consultations before in that kind of manner, honestly speaking, he would be on a very different level.
Because I think he did the national consultations, which were of course heavily disrupted, but I think that was in 2023 or 2024, which he moved around the country, and of course there were a lot of disruptions. But it speaks into the freedom of the opposition and how democratic is that, what we call a democracy.
But wrapping up this point, what the plotters decided to do was, let's clip his wings. Let's remove his people, hide them away on flimsy charges.
I get you.
Let's break down their spirit. Because these guys went to look for them the following day, found them in cells, still handcuffed from behind. Can you imagine someone spending your whole night
handcuffed?
Like 12 hours plus.
You block access of their lawyers.
And even families.
And
no one
even
speaks
families,
to them.
yes.
No one knows why. Even the people they're asking, you can clearly see the way they are speaking is that they don't know what's happening. They just know they're receiving orders that nobody should see their relative or talk to them or something.
And even the manner of their arrest.
We don't know even their crimes. They don't even know because they ambushed them. Can you imagine you ambushing harmless citizens? That is how low these people have come. But I like the fact that the Honorable Chagulanyi has remained strong. There was a rumor also that I heard from his camp that he had even advised some of them, you see, now that you have become targets,
some of you stay away for some time.
Go home to your families. We'll maybe meet you in Uganda or, now that the target is now on you. Because when they do that, it discourages him. You can say that he's really in pain. His people are being taken away. He doesn't know what to do. He doesn't have the power to do what he should do. So he's just there.
Let's speak about the trail of the president, who's been now so far has covered the whole of the northern region and is in the extreme east. This week, Bukedia and Manafwa and all that stretch. And of course, what made news from the Yellow Camp was, of course, the two stories. One, the student story, where students would be brought and putting on yellow T-shirts, and some parents complaining of how did we get here, and then the whole discussion of where some people would be had and given money to attend rallies, and you would see even clips of them singing the famous chant for the NUP camp. But be that as it may, we've seen very massive crowds actually on those rallies by the president, whether it's the organization or the reach in the eastern region, also considering of how Museveni performed in the last election in the regions that he has visited. He did massively well in 2021 in the northern region, and even shockingly in the eastern region. It was a little bit fairer, but still won the eastern region. So I don't know how you're reading into that trail in terms of people are not fatigued with their old man. There's still support for him, and it's an easier trail for him.
Well, I think that the president's trail has to be analyzed away from the aesthetics. Because you must understand what are the circumstances that facilitate what we see.
I get you.
If you don't go beyond what you see to understand what builds up to what you're seeing, you don't get the
you will not
picture.
get up.
What builds up to what we see? Of course, the East. Talking about the East and the change of the East used to be a stronghold of the FDC.
That's true.
In the last election, when visibly the FDC really had come from the BCJ to Oboy, and then the internal fractures had started, the FDC started to lose foothold. Hence, the NRM.
And even the people that were making the FDC strong in the East had since crossed. Because you had a quiet cartoon too, and then the speaker.
Yes,
and people like Alaso who had sort of logged out of the system.
Zoomed out. So, talking about the president's rallies, of course they're going to be full. And Harold,
people want to see the president.
Allow me to predict that from what I have seen and heard on ground, and even, we have friends that, intimate, they're in the yellow camp, and they intimate what is happening. I don't see the future of electioneering, this mass electioneering in Uganda being sustainable. And
so we might go away from universal suffrage.
Yeah, we might go
something that, of course, is rumored to be.
Very soon we might go away from universal suffrage because this election
it's straining
the ruling government.
It's straining to them, yes.
Because what is happening is this: apart from the people that they can gag, when Museveni is in an area, first of all, there are systems that supply. You have RDCs, you have DSOs.
You saw 1,000 clips of people who were removing the posters of the opposition on the night before the president comes.
That's the culture.
All through
that's the culture. Because I was somewhere in, I was on Hoima Road, where and you could clearly tell that Museveni has not come here. Because I told the guys in Chiboga that if it's painted Bobby Wine everywhere, I said Museveni has not come here because I see posters, I see NUP posters all over. The moment that Museveni comes here, you will know, because all these things will not remain standing. So you have the security apparatus. First of all, doing that mobilization for you, they move people to, and proudly you have even some. I remember someone was recently Baram was thanking Damurira for mobilizing the ghetto youth and what. These are security officers.
That's true.
They're contributing to the trail. You have people that have been paid. You have, before you even get to the people that have been paid, you have guys that use their power, DEO, cow to say, let this school attend, let that school attend. And the story about students is not new. It has always been like that, except that now because of the nearing exams and being third term, that's when the story will come up. Parents are concerned. The kids are not in school. They're attending rallies, But that is not new. Fairing students, fairing people, providing lunch, bring a bunch of artists. You have seen the Ronald Mayinjas, very shameless people on the trail.
In fact, one of the other biggest concerns were you bring the students to the rallies, and then you bring people who are doing obscene dances.
Yes.
To our children, giving them a content that not necessarily would be a campaign material.
But nobody cares, because what these people are after is that, has Museveni found numbers? Can we justify the budgets? Can he think that us in the west, in the east, or in this region, or in this district are doing well? He has support. That is all that they are after. So they will do absolutely anything and everything, because there are people who will come to rallies for that dance. Now they don't want to leave that demographic out.
Without, yes.
So but the money they have spent on this election, and Ugandans will take the money because of the economy, because border borders have been given 20K. All this in the West, where the Honorable Chagulanya has been given 20K, just don't appear today. Just park your border somewhere. A DISO takes them in Kabale, took them to some orientation somewhere and organized like a workshop for border guys, so that they don't see that, and there's now this natural competition of if Bobi Wine comes to the area and does well, then we know that you are not a good mobilizer.
I have a very interesting uncle who's been in the security setup for some time. And he was saying that, of course, he's not free to discuss, and I'm using the word uncle figuratively, but he was saying that we would be in a better place even if the state was cheating the elections, but would see the real results themselves and take the message from them. But the problem is that after cheating the elections, if they do, is that they don't even pick the lessons from what is apparent and the facts behind it. Because as a leader, you will say, why are these people following this person you have called a bandit, a Miyai? What is he selling? And the other angle that I wanted you to discuss is that, Nicholas, there hasn't been any arrests in Chiruhura where people were beating supporters.
Yes.
Even when...
And there
was time where they started to profile these people.
Yes.
Some of them were SFC.
Yes.
Some of them were rumored to have fought in Somalia. People were known that there were bodyguards to the RDC or a certain minister, but no punishment has come through, no arrests been made, and then you have 38 young men and women but rounded up and taken.
That tells you that these acts are sanctioned from some place. Otherwise, I don't think that Harold, we can look for sticks and go on the ring road here and cane people and walk away from that. Even if we are caning them on behalf of the NRM. I think, and the fact that they are government systems, they are SFC, they are disguised as either plainclothes or police officers, but you can see the manner, even the ambush in Museveni, you could see that
it was not ordinary police.
Because police has, even through its training and structure, police has a semi-human, there are limits that it cannot go over.
I get you.
You get, so when it goes over and above, tearing, holding ladies by their boobs and that kind of thing. So conclusively, Harold, I think that I just had hoped, that Bobi Wine would have a chance, to show his power. And I don't think that this will stop as he goes to the Midwest. When he goes to Kabarore, Kasese, and that side, it's not going to, and maybe the North, because these people are deliberate on making it feel and sound that like he has no national appeal. And we've been, looking at some of these influencers of NRM. Really, that they take some video and say, now he has been addressing few people but do you know in Bushenyi, do you know what he had to go through to go to the ground by the time he reaches?
I get you, yes.
People have been
the road, the nature.
The police has been here on ground, has captured machines, has taken out service providers, has intimidated people, has beaten some of them, has delayed him on the path, has passed him through panyas and impassable roads. So when the man comes and the people are not at the rally, then they start to spread some videos.
I saw you quarreling with an RDC wannabe on the issue, because if you say the person has no support, then let him be exposed.
Gentleman is my friend, but really that is
a myopic look at things.
That you cannot go through. That is a very myopic. Look at the insurmountable odds that someone has got to go through.
We have to close this, Nicholas, because we still have a lot to discuss. But
I think yesterday I was so happy with Shema people. They came out in large numbers
in Kabwohe. And this is not that they came to and this platform is unbiased. It's not like we're in support of anyone, but the defiance for guys to say that you will not choose for us which rally to attend, you will not choose for us which place to go to. So that defiance that Ugandans are saying, no, our voices must be heard. For me, that's what puts me in a place where I am happy to say that even amidst intimidation, and this is for whichever candidate. In a minute, Nicholas, you respond to the NRM the narrative that people come to see Bobi Wine, not Honorable Kyagulanyi.
That's what they want. But is Bobi Wine still, the question is Bobi Wine still Bobi Wine?
He last did a show maybe
when was the last time Bobi Wine was Bobi Wine? Because you must understand who is Bobi Wine, who is Honorable Kyagulanyi. Even if we say they are not the same, when was the last time when Bobi Wine was Bobi Wine?
We switched the lenses to another story that made the headlines this week. And Nicholas, outgoing DPP, Lady Justice Abodo, in what in American politics is known as the last hour in the White House, signed off nolle prosequi, which is no case, like discontinuance of a case, and against two notable people, one being Amos Lugolobi, Honorable, who's a state minister for our money bags, and then also the other person being Professor Juma Balunywa, who was at the helm of running MUBS, Makerere University Business School. One was for corruption and iron sheets in Karamoja, and the other one was on abuse of office. Both of them have seen their freedom and gotten away from what has been a charge hovering over their head for some time. Of course, we get through the past and how this story began. We had Nandutu, we had Lugolobi, we had the speaker in the Iron Sheet saga. We even had media reports where these very people, for example, Honorable Amos Lugolobi, had been saying that I took the Iron Sheets to help my people, which to the public eye and in the eye of the public court would be a semi-confession or something like that. But after some time, of course, we saw scenes from the court where they were praising God. I actually surprisingly saw the lawyer who was representing the client joining the choir. I think when they paid for legal services, they also paid for a little bit of joining in the choir on the victory praise and worship session at the end of the channel. But that, and then also the case of Juma Balunywa at the helm of moves, and they're saying it was political persecution, or it was true or not, or that for the person of what he had done, and the loss that we were saying was very meager. It was little monies that we were talking about and very few stuff here and there, but he had a success story. Is the system representative of the expectations of the people, our justice system I talk, or it protects the big fish, and then the Mufumbiros, the Eddie Mutwes that have been they can't get bail. Their cases are flimsy, if you could say, are staying in, and then if it's a thief of chicken, the chicken thief, if you read the book by the late Ngugi wa Thiong'o, The Devil on the Cross, when thieves were boasting, the one who was saying, I steal chicken for survival, was looked at as Katara. And then this person who have said, I stolen this, and would be the person to take the day. Is our system representative of the devil on the cross?
Thank you, Harold. I think that the Colonel Dr. Chiza Besigye and Obed Lutale made a year in jail. We have absolutely no case that has been preferred against them, charges that have been preferred against them. It's all in rumors, innuendos, and delays.
It's a blind threat.
You know? So the justice system, and I think it works worldwide. Even this week, same thing. We had Nicolas Sarkozy, the former French president, you know, who was supposed to be in prison for, is it 5 or 7 years?
I think it was a little bit less. I don't have the exact, but I know he was.
Yes, but and he was out in a couple of days. He reported and he was out in a couple of days. Yet his crime is internationally known, that he took money from Gaddafi, and not once, not twice, but you know, a number of times. So I think justice favors
the mafuta mingi, naturally.
Yes, naturally justice favors the big people. But in the case of Uganda, honestly, and I'm going to answer the moral question, then I will pose to you the legal questions so that our viewers can have perspectives. Amos Lugolobi, alongside these people that he stole these iron sheets with, are thieves who should be in prison right now. But you see,
if it was a sober system, put a qualifier.
This man had taken iron sheet, about 400 iron sheets, the ones that were found, you know, and made cow shed. Can you imagine? He made cow shed. He made animal shed. These are iron sheets that are supposed to be for people that have absolutely
no shelter over their head.
Shelter, nothing to eat, are scorched by the sun, are rained on in rainy season. They are Karamoja, the most needy region in the country. This is a minister of finance and planning at MOFPED. You know, he is, you know, I think a member of parliament.
Yeah,
in Ntenjeru North here in Kayunga, you know. So a man of his means, honestly speaking. So when we get him off, you know, this
the hook.
The hook. What are we trying to say?
What are we trying to communicate?
What are we trying to communicate? And all the co-accused that go high up as the Prime Minister, Speaker, and everyone. And I think the ones that were victims are just, in the same manner, are just the ones that were the small fish. So they say, let's go after Nandutu. And the other lady, what was her name?
It was...
who are both of them who were fired from cabinet.
From the cabinet.
You know? And then these ones now became victims. I found, you remember his boss who said he found the iron sheets on his...
Somehow.
He didn't know, but... You know,
they were in the compound.
They were in the compound. So thank God. You know, so I think that, and we have said this time and time again, that we are a society that rewards corruption. We reward bad man. If someone is emboldened, is stealing something as petty as iron sheets that should belong to the most vulnerable community in the country, then how about bigger things? How about national resources? You know? So I think that as a country, we need to collectively soul search.
I think it's worrying that for the big fish that have been involved and maybe involved in the allegations of corruption in the country, I think the biggest big fish that went to the coolers for that was David Chandi Jamwa for the NSSF. But we can count 1,000 stories. Maybe if it's also the representation of the justice system that their research is, because I know some cases as a lawyer where even when the facts would point to the criminality, but the justice system from the police investigations, the forensics team, what would be the white collar at CID, did very shabby work, that the DPP knows that if I take this before a judge, it's not going to see the light of the day. There will be a no case to answer, and it will be me seeing the shame, which might be easier for other cases. And even sometimes the truth with the political cases that we are discussing here is that maybe there's an instruction of please make sure that you prosecute. So the DPP, the RSA on the file has an instruction to make sure that they prosecute. Looking through the file, of course, there will not be any evidence. So the best that they can do to serve the interests of the powers that be is to delay this trial as much as possible. And that's why there's no one I don't think there's anyone in Luzia for treason. Even for these cases that we are talking about, where if DC historians at the peak of opposition had but gun in 2001, 2006. There's no one who's serving a sentence. We've never successfully prosecuted anyone. And even the NUP is playing in the script of how the state deals with the opposition and uses the legal system to frustrate you for the beginning part. But going through trial, for example, if we had a limitation on the law that if you do not prosecute and conclude within this period, you would let go of 90% of the political prisoners.
On remand for so many years.
Exactly.
But you see, that is where the trouble is. And you don't think that Akleo Chivumbi, Eddie Mutwe, you know, Waswa Mafumbiro was charged with drilling when he was not in Kavre that day. Even Olivia Alter was not in Kavre that day of that drill of Bobby Wine's birthday.
Yes.
You know, but now these are the people that the government is holding as criminals. The state is holding as criminals.
We talked about Shivarama last time, and I was shocked to hear the Prime Minister, was it yesterday or yesterday but one, saying that he knows where Shivarama is and Shivarama is in Kavure hiding.
The Prime Minister is loose with her words. The Prime Minister is loose with her words, and sometimes I don't think that... But
someone in that position should not be loose with her words.
She listens to her, but there is no accountability. There is nothing. There is not a proper system would have held her to say, where is he? He has been missing for so many years, coming to 6 now. So
maybe it's a characteristic of fishermen.
Can you point us in the direction? But you know, but the point I was making is, it now becomes really, really unfair to see that the people that are culpable for putting this country behind keep being rewarded. Amos Lugolobi should not be a cabinet, should not be a state minister, should not be a minister, should not be a leader of any level. Plus all these people that were implicated in the iron sheet scandals. But these ones are set free, promoted, voted to SEC. They are in the arms of the president. They are moving around. While the ones that are on the street, just following their leader, believing in his vision, just you know, are the ones that are arrested 4-5 years. They spend them on remand with cooked up charges. So we are coming to a brink of something that we are not going to love.
We turn the lenses to another story, Nicholas, that made headlines in Uganda and in Kenya. And we're talking diplomacy.
Yes.
And the president, while on those news briefs after the campaign in the night, he was talking about the frustrations of a president of a landlocked country. Talks about the endless discussions that have been had with Kenya on export and importation of services, and described the Indian Ocean as his sea. And talking about the access to it, that has ruffled a few feathers in Kenya, with, of course, the foreign minister coming out to say that the president knows international law. He was mentioning that in passing. The president also alluded to the frustrations of the endless discussions that have been had with Kenya, and over importation, excise duty, a lot, and warned that there may be a war in the future. Of course, some of the media outlets that quoted that story did not put the in the future part, and focused on my sea and my ocean. That discussion on the frustration and if the government is doing enough, because Nicholas, as we were discussing before we came on air, we're discussing about how some of the nations that had limitations of nature and the mapping have done more to secure the interests of their nations. We talked about what Egypt did on the Nile access. And even they have a defense office in Kampala specifically to protect that agreement. The issue with Egypt and Ethiopia fighting about a dam. We can talk about all these, the interests of that 1,000 packs the US has with the defense strategic apparatus and sites in the world for their own defense. But we have a country that has, for example, failed to, and even we talk about a Jumuiya that has failed to secure some of the interests for their nations 40 years into, because I think Uganda has had one president. In that same time, Kenya has had 4 or 5. Tanzania, the same story. But we haven't had a discussion on that and conclusively to deal with that. Also, discuss in terms of the reputation, our diplomatic reputation. Of course, we had the South Sudanese, our neighbors in the north, reopened their embassy in Nairobi after it has been closed for some time for failure to pay rent. We've also had stories of our diplomats messing up and loose words coming out of our leaders. It's a story that made news.
Thank you, Harold. And I want to discuss this story because part of me feels that the president was actually right. Not even feels. I think the president was right in some respect, even to international law, because some of these endowments, like the sea, are not monopolies of the countries that exist thereon. And according to the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, the country that is at the sea, of which we are signatories, I think Uganda and Kenya, has...
Both are, that's true.
Controls the coast, but cannot monopolize it. It has to have fair policies.
That's true.
You know?
As long as
allow...
I think the law is that as long as their interests are protected.
But I want to discuss this point using 2 examples, and I will tell you where exactly our problem is. As you can, let's start with what you mentioned of the Egyptians. The Egyptian policy concerning the Nile, because Egypt is a desert nation, you know? Most of it is really desert. And the heart and soul of that nation and survival,
sustenance, it's the
Nile, basically. So from as early as so many years ago, they understood that. So many years ago, colonial times, even I think might pre-colonial, because the rumor was that, I don't know how true it is, but some people have spoken about it, that the reason why even Mutesa invited the colonialists to come. So actually this is pre-colonial issue. He wrote the letter for the colonialists to come for protection and what? Was because of the Arabs coming from the north, coming to scout the Nile, you know, make some demands, try to initiate some treaties. That is as far back as, you know,
the first European stepping ground in the Uganda area.
In Uganda area. So that means that the Egyptians had, from that time, that's about a century.
That should be around 18.
A century or 2 ago. Had
the 1980s, 1890s.
Yes, you know, and that was the, I think, 19th century. Had already known that our heart and soul survives from this Nile. So they have had a consistent policy. That's why from then to the agreements, to the developments that are noticed, to the defense thing they have here in Uganda, to the recent skirmishes they almost had with Ethiopia, because they keep track of every downstream country. Ourselves, South Sudan, the Blue Nile from Ethiopia. That's why the Grand Reconnaissance Dam had brought a lot of issues, because that dam actually was not just for water, but also the silt, the soil that silts from the mountains. That
they are that specific.
That silting
on their interest.
Taking that soil to, because those people, because of the desert, like I told about this, so the river brings a lot of soil. So the dams downstream will prevent that in the effort of capturing water. So that policy has been consistent for years because they understood their limitation
by nature.
Now enter Ethiopia, 130 million people, trapped
by Eritrea,
then then Djibouti,
yes,
and then Somaliland.
Then Somalia here on the coast.
Somaliland, then Somalia, or in the Horn of Africa. Now, when I think this was a very cardinal mistake. I understand that the Italian Eritrea was shaped like that, before it got annexed by Ethiopia to become one region, one country. But I think that in 1993, after 30 years
of independence,
the Afaki War, I think they should have negotiated a way to reach the coast. Part of the negotiation to say, okay, guys, now you are free to have your own country. I think they should have negotiated,
especially since they were in control before the colonization.
Yes, they were in control of that whole region. So I think that they should have
provided for
that,
a way to give access,
even if it is maybe 50 square kilometers, to just run them to close to where the Asab.
And it would make perfect sense because stem tribes, because on the borders, like it's the people,
and it's not even a long distance. So when Eritrea got independence, so now what happens is that 130 million people, this is the biggest landlocked country, is landlocked and is trapped, and because of their clashes with Eritrea, with their neighbors, now they use a port in Djibouti, which almost is what sustains Djibouti.
Yes,
and every year they spend, I think, $1 billion in import taxes and whichever. So when someone says that we should have a fairly negotiated access, honestly speaking, from a landlocked country's perspective, you should understand them. You should understand them. However, what is our mistake? Our mistake is that having understood that we are landlocked and having understood
the upper says
nobody is going to give you a free lunch. Nobody will say, okay, now we have given you a free pass to the sea here. You can call this Uganda.
Especially even in your own country where people deny each other accesses on a 50 by 100 plot.
Yes. On an estate, someone says, no, you will not pass a road here. We were recently a country on a large farm, and someone had, they had to first involve the authorities at the highest levels to say, naturally, there should be a road after this kind of thing in this kind of place. And the road is to, this is a big time farmer. You want to bring trucks and
same story on international law, like we're discussing. Yes,
you cannot bring in tractors, trucks of whatever large scale. He has no access to the road because, okay, we shall pay for the land. Let's make a road. We'll pay for its construction, also compensate in terms of. You say no, just out of spite of who is this guy who came and bought this land from this tribe.
But should Museveni, who is quote in quotes mentoring these people, should he take advantage for the sake of the nation and conclude some of these issues? Because it's a matter of sitting man to man and negotiate something that you think will secure the generations to come.
Exactly. What I was going to say is that is the place where you must ask yourself, what should we take advantage of?
Basics of international diplomacy.
That is where diplomacy comes in, because you cannot get access to the sea. So what have you put in place, like Egypt, to say, let's negotiate with Uganda so that they don't do this kind of thing. Even if they do this kind of thing, maybe a dam or what, they don't reach this kind of level. They don't restrict water. They don't have...
And for the record, Uganda has ever tried to breach that.
Yes, there was actually some time when there were rumors of why can't we channel part of the Nile to pass through some place, and that would bring a war. That would bring the Egyptians raining down. Why? Because
the agreement is specific that it would be an act of war.
Yes, that would be an act of war, but what they're trying to do downstream is to try to negotiate. Even what they reached an agreement with Ethiopia, that all comes in diplomacy to say we are landlocked, but how can we
secure our
That's why
interests.
the pipeline does not pass through Kenya, which will be our traverses through a vast Tanzania to get to this, increasing the costs, increasing the time, increasing the delays, because there are things that we have not diplomatic, and this is something that we should have seen many years ago, to say that we must make Kenya our best ally. Why? Because they are the ones with our most efficient access to the ocean.
We are in a toxic relationship with that nation, because they say no Ugandan eggs, no Ugandan milk. Then they open the borders again. They are our best friends, but perhaps, maybe, I don't know who's tying on who, but it's very toxic for the areas that have been left to the whims of who is in power at the time, as opposed to having lasting solutions that benefit the East African community, because these are one people. It's many stories of, for example, that Sebei region, where a man has one wife in Uganda and the second wife is in Kenya. They just cross the border to their second wife.
Many
communities along that border, even the Luo this side. But you have issues that can't be dealt with by leaders. And it's on us, because we are on the begging side. We are the ones that need them. And our leaders are not doing enough to secure that.
Museveni has really tried, to give him some credit, on Jumoyi. I think he has been the one that has pushed through the most, has pushed through the most. And the Honorable Kadaga has also done some work in the past 5 years to try to stabilize, try to do everything. Of course, Kenya is that moody friend. It's like a teenage girl. Today they are in agreement, tomorrow because...
a certain minister wants to make a statement.
Yes, because no, but most of the policies in Kenya are not are not personal. They are selfish to a level of a nation caring about its citizens. If Kenyans produce good maize like they have done in the past year or season or two, then they will start to restrict Ugandan maize from coming, so that the Kenyan maize
protects the Kenyan market.
That's basic protectionism, And same with other things, the eggs and milk and everything. But Uganda our policy should be, let's tie on Kenya as much as possible. This is someone that you need. This is someone that you see opportunities with.
So Kenya and Kericho should understand if we block Kenyan tea.
No, we can't block Kenyan tea, because our destiny is tied to how friendly we are with Kenya. And I understand that sometimes you negotiate from a weaker point, but that is how we are. We're a landlocked country. You have to concede those points and say, so you don't threaten war and say in the future there will be wars. No. You see how to have a consistent policy of making these people signing agreements, negotiations, saying let's reduce this one. This you saw the war. You might be the thing about the oil importation, how the clash, with the was it
it was and then an Heritage and then Total, yes.
No, for the importation of crude products in Kenya.
Yes, please.
So all those things can be sorted out diplomatically.
It's true.
So our position should be, let's tie on Kenya as much as possible. And the way Egypt has made the downstream countries obey, or not obey, but obey might come off, they are forcing you to, but understand the situation and commit to some commitments. That's the same way we should be dealing with Kenyans.
Still Sam, and we are switching also the lens to another story, but it also, in a way, relates to Uganda and Kenya. So we remember that there are two Kenyan activists that crossed the border to show solidarity to the Honorable Chagulanyi. And when they did, they were disappeared. Drawn, the usual. And finally, the president, still in the same press, confirmed that they had been in the fridge. And of course, the news is that there had been some negotiations, and surprisingly by the Kenyan government, that ensured that those two gentlemen were released. In the aftermath of their release, they have done a series of TV appearances on national television in Kenya, talking about the state of opposition politics in Uganda and activism and the shrinking of the civil society space. But the president coming out to confirm that someone was held in a fridge. Of course, they qualified and said what is called in a fridge are cold rooms, the freezers. And they said where they were arrested in Kisenyi, which is known as a training ground for the SFC, has over 150 Ugandans. And there was also apparently, according to their story, that the brother to a minister was among the people that were arrested there, and that they do not know what's going on. Most of the families do not know where those people are. And in the wake of where we are asking and talking about people who have disappeared, if it is something to go by, it's a confirmation of these state kidnaps and what. But the president coming to confess to an illegality that these people had been in state custody for all that period without a charge until maybe diplomacy happened and they were released in wee hours of the night. It's something that also made news, and I don't know what you read into that story.
Thank you. I think
what Ugandans should know.
The president had no option but to confirm, because diplomacy had been involved to a level of Uhuru Kenyatta, the former president, the foreign minister of Kenya, which was quite commendable. I don't know if
it's our turn.
If it's our turn.
You remember when Agatha and the colleagues were arrested in Kenya?
In Tanzania.
In Tanzania.
And people were saying...
Kenya was issuing statements.
Yes.
Uganda was saying, we don't know who sent them there.
Who sent them there, because they know that here back home they're activists, and perhaps
someone has dealt with their problem.
Someone has dealt with that problem far away from us. If they come back,
it's a prodigal child.
If they don't, well and good, it's actually much better that they do. So I would commend the Kenyan Foreign Ministry and the former president and those that were involved in trying to negotiate a path for them. So because of that negotiated path, I don't think the government had a choice but to come out and say, yes, we've had them, because that came through the
as experts of riots, according to the president. So
the president's argument was that they had come to export riots or to sow seeds of disruptions, which you cannot say no to, because they're experts of riots, definitely.
I don't know if they're experts.
And that is not the debate. The debate is the manner of holding them 38 days incommunicado and the things that they say they saw. Now, I think that if there is anything that unhinges this regime,
I get you,
or get them, it's to say that someone has come to, because we have survived so much on intimidation, and I think that Museveni and his cronies must fight the Kenyan spirit from spreading to Uganda, because
it scares every leader in East Africa.
It does, and that's why I think Samia Suluhu dealt absolutely
I saw Ugandan on a lighter side of things. I saw a Ugandan describe her as Samia Sululu. If you know what Nsululu does,
they dealt with those people in the most brutal way. Of if you're demonstrating, we can even come and kill your child and family. Very, 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 very brutal. What happened in Tanzania. So what Museveni's worst nightmare,
is Ugandans taking on the shape and form of their cousins.
Because Ugandans usually, even when there is a protest downtown, even back in the day at university, in campus, the moment police shows up, a few tear gas canisters here, some people are arrested, a few chibokos, everyone runs home, everyone says, I will catch the protest on TV.
By the way, I actually have an opinion on that. I don't think that's the spirit of Ugandans. Whilst Ugandans are tolerant people, I think the way civil unrest has been dealt in Uganda tells the story, does not tell the story of the spirit and form of Ugandans, but the brutality of our security apparatus. That it dictates that if you had Kenyans living in Uganda and you have the same state apparatus reacting the way it reacts, the Kenyans would be seen in the form as the Ugandans are seen, because the president here deals with things differently. You remember the November riots when Bobby Wine was one day. And even the president talks about it proudly and say, look, We put it out in action. But you remember, if you open the stories and see the nature of the people that were killed, women that were vending food, children that were working with their mothers,
coming from school.
Yeah, because that's how they deal with
shopkeepers.
Yeah, that's how the way the security deals with it dictates how people are predisposed on how looking at an option of civil unrest to cause change is looked at in Uganda.
Thank you, Harold. And okay, thank you, Harold. Actually, that is an eye-opener. That the way Ugandans react is not the cause, is the effect of how they are dealt with by the security forces. Now,
it's the same thing like when we were growing up and you're playing football on a local pitch, and people are saying, let's extend and by playing 30 minutes. You knowing the wrath of your father, you will not participate in that disobedience. You will grab your jerry can and go and fetch water and go back home. It's the same thing. Not that you are an obedient person, but it's because you know how your father deals with such an... Yes.
Yes, you're right on that point. So Museveni's nightmare is people who come from what we saw in Kenya, the Gen Z protests. That will be Museveni's nightmare.
Yeah.
Why? Because if that thing ever happened in Uganda, there may not be a point of coming back. Because people have come to a point, people are slowly coming to the age where youth have no jobs. And these are guys, and sometimes when we speak about these things, people think that we're trying to be as you know, as fair as possible, because people have no jobs. Even the little hope they have, you've taken it away. They have absolutely no hope. This is the same thing that happened back in the 80s when Museveni came to Ruwero, and everyone just joined him, because Obote had brought this region to a blink of, I would rather join Museveni and die with him in the bush than be found at home. When Obote's and what tilted the war in favor of the NRA was Obote's brutality, because some of these Obote's commanders, most of them had been, from his tribe, had tribalized that matter, and even the local communities, because of the skirmishes, not skirmishes, really the breakup between Obote and Kabaka back in 66, his arrest, his death in exile, everything being blamed on Obote. Good Muganda is the dead one. Naturally, the people were anti-Obote. They were not majorly pro-Museveni. Museveni was not known. They were just, this is an enemy of my enemy, so he's my friend, But then Obote starts through Oyite Ojok, later Ogola, and they decide to do scorched earth, to say, okay, if the people of Ruwero and this region are supporting the rebels, where we know that the rebels slept, were fed, took cows, we shall go there and absolutely kill everyone. So most of these kadogos that actually Museveni had in the bush were orphans
of the people that had been murdered.
Yes.
They were seeking revenge for the sake of their fathers.
People found themselves in a place where you have no option but to join. You are safe, with the rebels than staying in your place. So
this is my theory.
When you bring people to that kind of age, a small thing like that can tilt them over to a point of no return.
This is my theory, Nicholas. I count 5 things that have kept this regime in power. One is the wisdom of Museveni in dealing with the opposition, both roughly that we are talking about.
Stick and carrot.
Yes, and then also the extension of how he has dealt with the opposition, that the former leaders in opposition are now running the government. Empower them, look at what they need in terms of the monetary solution and give it to them. 2, the brutality that we are talking about. 3, the rise of the middle class. That I'm not at the extreme of things. That if they call a demonstration on Kampala Road, I earn my car 1.5. I will stay home, pay bike rent of 400,000. It's okay. Things are bad, but
I can
survive in this system.
I can swim through the waves, yeah.
And the other big thing, the cheap food, which is the biggest advantage, that if Ugandans lacked food and what to eat, they'll be on the streets the next day. So at the extreme of things, there's availability, which they can deal with. And then the number 5, which is the biggest thing, is, which I link on 2 things, is that the play of the money. The play of the money, because you have very many people with power, they influence communities. The scattering of the money, to say that even when your Shamba boy wants to demonstrate, like there are people who didn't go to the rally in Kabwohe yesterday because their boss is something in government.
Yes.
So if you go, you lose your job. So you have scattered resources that are controlling the political view, especially in a state where most of the money making rounds is in a third world setting. political related money from corruption or from earning from government. So you're controlling the trade so you can control the whims and the wishes of the people, not to even start an opposition. Because if the government is the biggest employer, it says a lot about how the democracy will run. And for that, the 5 political system plays in the advantage of maintaining the status quo as opposed to the insecurity of how the change will tilt that we are talking about.
The president has done excellently in his own
that
way.
Angle,
in his own
protecting
way.
the game. It's a Game of Thrones.
Yes,
he's winning his
fight in playing the Game of Thrones. I think the way he has dealt with opposition, the way he has dealt with internal threats, internal successors, the Gilbert Bukenyas of this world and Amama Mbabazi's, he has moved his...
I think you're overestimating Gilbert Bukenya.
He has moved his... let me tell you, in retrospect, you might think it was just a joke, but these are people who held power back then and would have moved entire regions.
Mahogany would
entire
move
regions
Uganda.
Believed in them. Now he's a shadow of his former self, But back then, he was a serious contender, So I think he has moved his pieces well on the chessboard, to play the Game of Thrones. And but
he has said checkmate more than we've sent checkmate to the Ugandan electorate.
Yes, that he has done. But let me also remind you that the best player of the Game of Thrones was perhaps nobody played the game better than Peter Baelish. But one day he's cornered in the north. And the same two girls he was trying to manipulate
are the ones that end.
Yes, they end his life. So the Game of Thrones, the question is, how long can you play it? So I think arresting these Kenyan activists was supposed to be, and that is why they could not be released immediately. It was supposed to be a big statement to say, you guys are not allowed here. When you come, you suffer the same fate that Bob and Nicholas suffered. So I think that is what... But the revelation of what they saw there,
it's telling.
And I saw people coming out to say, now police, of course the police spokesperson had said they didn't know.
In
but
the application for habeas corpus, yes.
Then Chinobe had also, dismissed
the justice had said that there's no evidence that they're in the custody of government, so the application is dismissed.
Now let me tell you this. I think these people were genuinely right that they didn't know. You see, that's the thing. I don't know that police knew. Police might have, you have rumors that maybe they were picked by this, but they don't know definitively that they're in custody of anyone. That's how this facility is run in a semi-autonomous manner, And they said that the person the final boss of that facility is the CDF. That's what they said. And we all understand that the CDF has powers to do over and above. This is not Kakaba agenda or what was the other gentleman called? Okandiho, whoever. The ones that
Abel
came before.
Kandiho, yes.
Abel Kandiho, CMI. Those ones are working because from orders from above. But this gentleman has some semi-autonomous power.
It's like they handed over the security apparatus under UPDF. It's the only thing that maybe the president fully delegated to someone.
There might be a relationship between what Kahindo Tafida has already said, this generator, that criticism of the CDF to the arrest of the brother. It could be, let me arrest him and see what you're going to do. What can you do?
So the brother is a statement.
Yes, so his brother is a statement to say.
And Kahinda has been very critical.
He has been critical because Kahinda is these people who speak
over 9 months of consistent shooting at the system.
And this is a man that we all know does not like to take criticism of any level. He believes that he is God-given. He's divine. So the same way you cannot speak about God in a certain manner is the same way you don't have a right to point a finger at him.
We close that, Nicholas. We have to, but the biggest quote that I've had from Kahinda Watafire in these 9 months or so of his opposition in position is that you guys can say what you want, but what you know, we know. But what we know,
you don't know.
You don't know. We switch the guns, Nicholas. This is a sad story, but one of the private hospitals, TMR, in Naria, one of the families had the unfortunate passing of their child, I think 12 years in P6 in one of the private schools. They fell off a building. They were taken to hospital, and after some time they passed on. but the hospital has not released the body. Body was sent in a funeral home and under custody. The hospital hasn't released the body. In fact, there was a vigil on, I think, Wednesday or something, and the burial had been slated for today, being a Saturday when we are recording this. But they are unsure that they're going to bury because there's a balance of 150 million. Hospital administration had told them that if you can bring half, we can release the body. This is not the first time this is happening. Previously, the medical the medical tribunal had said that, of course, you do not have the right. We don't have a law there. We do not have a right to hold the body in detention over non-payment of hospital bills. The last time that matter came where they had sued the minister and the Ministry of Health, the court had given directives to the minister to ensure that they make laws that limit how much private hospitals can charge and how they can enforce their payment. Because in the silence of the law, as a lawyer, of course, that hasn't been done for over 2 years by Dr. Ruth Acheng. But in the silence of the law, the only way the hospital should enforce payment is to enforce it as a civil debt. Go to court and then enforce action, because the law is silent. But it speaks a lot. And Nicholas, the sad story is that this week that we are passing, the veteran politician, Rwanyarare, everyone knows Rwanyarare. Yes, James Rwanyarare, is that his family had to go to court to seek an order for court to allow them to sell his personal belongings, including a private car and some cows.
3 cars.
Yes.
And some cows.
To raise 65 million to Nakasero Hospital, where he is unwell. It's the representation of our health system with lack of insurance and lack of regulation that is going on and on. And of course, the worry of the story is that most of the Ugandans are just a medical bill away from bankruptcy.
I think that's where I wanted to start from. That before we say, okay, Uganda is a peaceful country, the components of peace are not merely absence of war. You know, it has to extend to this kind of thing. Because when you're one medical bill away, the questions should be asked. And actually, questions should have been asked during COVID time. Because during COVID time is when hospitals would, because of oxygen and everything, and then someone dies later, spent 10 days of intensive care, a lot of... Because
even the veteran politician, Agre Awori, if you remember, the family couldn't access the body for some time because they had an unpaid balance.
On this topic, I know it's heated, and the emotional thing is the hospital is more raw, release the body. That's the popular sentiment. And sometimes, from a perspective of a family, a young one, grieving, the grief, you know. But from a perspective of, if we want to be fair, honestly speaking, we want to understand that this is a business. Yeah, I don't know how you said the kid had been in coma for how long?
For some time, I think around 2 or 1 week.
Yes, so you must understand that resources have been put in, oxygen perhaps, the caretakers, everything. You know, the bill populates to that amount of money. Now we can have a conversation of if that is a fair amount. Now, we can debate the moral grounds of holding a body of someone has already died, the grieving family and everything. But we can also talk about why the hospitals have reached this level. What are the gaps that are being exploited? Number one, why don't we have
regulations on the issue? For me, that's the biggest
regulations.
issue.
Number two, how long have we gone to town asking about the debate of national insurance, health insurance policy? Number three, what happened with Lubowa? These people who are in Nakasero, the Agri Awori, so many people in Nakasero, the Wanyarares, there's so many people. There was actually the lady who spoke about it. About 3 months months ago.
I think it was Justice Irene Muria-Gonja.
Yes.
About on the funeral of the husband of the
and she said, we are well off. We are A class.
By the time I suffer,
we are A class like Ugandans. Have served in government for so long, so many, have so many waivers and can pull so many strings. But by the time I suffer like this, then how about the regular Ugandan? So this conversation, people have been going to town for ages talking about these conversations, but we have a redundant system that does not think that this is a priority. But let's address key issues here, like I've said. Let's address the insurance, national health insurance policy. If I am a minister of education, the weaknesses in the system,
in the public schools.
What weakens the system is the public schools. When I have my own private schools, okay, I don't know why you put it in education, because there's a minister who actually has schools, So there's a level of legislation, of policy, of that he will not extend to, because they will depreciate his empire. Okay, here we can even speak freely, because Chrysostom Moyingo has, the set of schools,
Yes.
So how is he going to set a price ceiling, which for me I don't believe in sometimes, because it's supposed to be a free economy. How is he going to place a price ceiling on requires all policies that infringe on his own profitability? So we've talked about our transport system. We're even going very far. Exactly.
That transport system within Kampala.
Mention any sector. And I will show you that the mafia are the ones that deliberately say, if we put these laws, our private hospitals will not profit from this. Our private clinics, pharmacies are not going to profit. If Mulago was dispensing flourishing and dispensing drugs, that hospital, that first pharmacy
out of Mulago
would not be in Mulago, would not have been there. But the reason why someone came, and that story maybe is for another day, or let's classify it as TikTok chibozi. When you talk about TikTok chibozi, our viewers are talking about unverified information. This is in the public, allegedly, It comes about because of the inefficiencies of Mulago Hospital. So then, therefore, when someone rises and says, let's make Mulago effective, then they say,
you will be stepping on someone's...
Yes, and the fights that have been in Mulago, I think you remember when the... I forget how they called it. Was it called Muebesa? But the chief of health services was arrested. All those commissions start from people who want to straighten the system. They're not merely that he's corrupt, coming from people who want to straighten the system. But the mafia have their tongues so long inside that they're not going to allow... Just mention any sector, and I will show you how the mafia have captured it to make it to their advantage. So government weaknesses advantage them. Why I was telling you even primarily as we conclude that. That's why the NRM has a righteous manifesto, but it cannot implement it. Why? Because
it will be stepping on the people that make up the NRM.
Yes, and if you understand Museveni and Musevenism, it is that he doesn't want to over squeeze his own people. So
we will conclude this story by telling you that in 2018, an NGO called the Health Equity and Policy Initiative sued the Minister of Health and the Attorney General. Miscellaneous cause number 2010 of 2018. And in that cause, it was for enforcement of human rights. And they were challenging that we are talking about, the charges by private hospitals and etc. The recommendations and the orders that were made by Justice Philip Odoki, one of them was saying that the Minister of Health and the second respondent, who was the Attorney General, are directed to ensure the necessary legislation is put in place within a period of 2 years to, among others, 1, regulate and standardize levies, rates, and pricing of medical services provided for by private health facilities. 2, restrain all private hospitals from detaining patients and holding bodies of deceased patients for pecuniary reasons.
Yes.
That has not been done, but maybe they are still within their time, because that judgment was delivered in January 2024. We wait to see that story, but finally, Nicholas, the last story of the day is the comments of the director. In 2 minutes, Director of National Council of Higher Education, as far as the state of our universities. And she actually described them as glorified high schools. To give context to our viewers, it's Uganda has, I think, around 60 universities, and 10 are private. Makerere being the university in the biggest in Uganda, and also in the ranks in Africa. Previously, it had even gone close to being the 4th, which was also research-based. But if you see the list of the biggest universities in Africa, I think out of the 15, you'll find over 11 that are South African, and maybe Morocco, and then Makerere comes in around the 9th or something. But she was specifically talking about the lack of research that has made these universities glorified high schools, in her own words. This is the director of National Council for Higher Education that actually gives the licenses to these universities. And in the same week, we had the row where one of the private universities, Kampala International University, has been the eye of activism. It has actually sued and preferred a case of defamation against Dr. Spire Sentongo, still on allegations of corruption, allegations of selling degrees, not paying NSSF for workers, and etc. As our last story in 2 minutes, what did you read, especially for the story of our education system? We've discussed about curriculum and etc.
Now, Harold, I hate to do this again because every problem, like I told you, in every sector, has begun or has been propagated or left to go on because of the gaps in starting from the top. Now, with the liberalization of education, universities coming up and mushrooming up. First of all, education is supposed to be, I think, the most serious ministry or sector the government looks at, because this is shaping the minds and consequently the future of the nation. That's why having a minister of education whose education is questionable, should start to paint a picture of what the powers that be,
Nicholas,
how they think.
Don't go very far. The Vice Chancellor of Mackay,
yes,
Professor Nawangwe, who should be representing the biggest university, bigger on research, has had better time of his tenure defending his own academic qualifications.
That's where I was coming. I wanted to start from the top, because the fish starts to rot at the top. And then we come down to how this has affected to a level where now employers say, yes, we are a law firm. Yeah, you remember, and I think this is not the only part of the world where they do that, but it had not come before. Yeah. You remember, I used to watch a show called Suits. I think that firm, Harvey Specter, Louis Leach, Jessica Pearson. They used to hire from Harvard. So we have now employers. Some of them it's a policy, because we've had social media people say, why do you say you can only hire from Makerere and UCU? That is discrimination. But this is after a long time of dealing with graduates from somewhere. But that's why I wanted to analyze that issue from the top. That this ministry is supposed to be a ministry that thrives on excellence. Why? Because the minds and the futures of Ugandans are subject to how they learn, what they learn, and the quality of what they learn. When that is compromised from the very top, then subsequently the ripple effects are going to be felt throughout the system. The number two question that we have is what I was telling about collusion. With the liberalization of education, the sectors were liberalized everywhere. So private universities came up, degrees were extended. There's so many gaps in enforcing the standards of this education that is being given out. That is why some people, I'm telling you, cannot say, let me hire a lawyer from
a certain
I will not mention names because I have friends across, even those who come with law degree or any sort of degree from these kinds of institutions. Actually, the time we had, we will not speak about this on air because people may, sometimes you're accused of elitism, or you're looking down on these catering for people who are less privileged, so they have also access, to education. But education,
what quality?
Which
can be cured by regulation and setting standards.
What quality of education? If a whole university is being accused internationally of that Cameroonians, Nigerians who want to buy a PhD come to this particular university, has there been an inquiry that has there been a report? Has there been a withdrawal of has there been a withdrawal of a license to say, guys, no, let's first withdraw this license and
put your
light a torch, put your affairs in order, So and the questions are being asked about that university on social media, and I think they are culprits of so many of those things that they are being asked about. So the question is this deliberate? To let the education system go to the dog so that we have a mediocre things, But I'm telling you that's why people say, I had seen on social media people saying, if you have a hotel, hire a Kenyan to manage it. So this eventually, in a country that people don't have jobs and opportunities, eventually,
but we are importing such,
and we are studying and we are churning out students and
in hotel management and hospitality,
in everything. But these cannot be trusted. You'd rather hire from an expatriate. What I'm trying to say is that eventually the quality of what you have acquired is going to show. The quality of what you have acquired is going to show. So the gaps in enforcement of the requirements and also the collusion.
Policy, yes.
The collusion of KIU is Basaja Baraba. Basaja Baraba is the head of entrepreneurs unit of he sits in SEC. What are you going to do about his school? We have had reports, honestly speaking, and sometimes some of these things are not even some. Most of the things that we say here are righteous convictions. How many kids have died in SETA? Is it SETA?
The high school.
In the last 1 year.
Under suspicious
circumstances.
The police does not come out to say how the investigation ended because it's now out of the news.
The parents have questions and little answers. Nobody knows what's going on. No one is safe. The parents are at home thinking maybe my kid could be next. And when they are next, no, the school doesn't even take responsibility to say, okay, this happened, the kid fell from a tree, so now we are saying no kid should climb a tree. Nothing is coming out. It's just blackness.
As one of the opposition faces said that do not expect them to do what does not threaten their power. I'm afraid that we have to close it at that. But I need your parting shot.
The research bit.
The research bit?
The research bit. See, so with the liberalization, now education now is more of a business, is more of a money-making venture.
Than the basics.
Than
of what an institution
that are
of higher learning.
To churn out higher learning, to churn out people that are going to dominate the job market internationally. That we should, as a graduate of your university, you should be able to compete when you go to Kenya, when you go to Rwanda, when you go to the far west, or in Asia, But what is important is that we get as many people coming in. They spend their 3 years, they give us their money, we churn them out.
Even our best courses, which was in lines of medicine, the interns now are known for activism because every year they have to strike for their internship money and posts.
Yes.
The basics.
Yes, really. Yeah, exactly. Now you turn doctors into activists, Why? Because they have to fight, but that's at a different level. But the research bit, I feel like we have lost it in this whole business-minded, and that's why Makerere, we used to try because it's government, so it's not concerned so much about admissions and everything. But for the private institutions especially, honestly speaking, this is a business. Our
director is giving us a bad eye. Nicholas, we have to close. We can speak about this, and maybe it's one of the things that we're going to discuss in detail to tell you how the South Africans are doing well, how even the professors in these universities are not writing enough and not doing research. Even the Makerere, the biggest institution, does not have, like the engineering department, no one is writing. The innovation level is low. We can dig deep into that. But thank you very much for making us your go-to podcast for what is happening in Uganda. We can't wait to see you in the next episode. Do not tire to comment on some of the issues that we're discussing and tell us more, or send a link on something that you need us to discuss. As usual, I have to thank my friend Nicholas for making the time to let Ugandans know what is going on. And until the next episode, we want to tell you, keep the Ugandan dream alive, and we cannot wait to see you for the next episode. Thank you very much.
Thank you.